Hello, everybody, and welcome to your Chem 113 review on unit conversions. My name is Jason, and I work for the ASU Tutoring Centers. Now, unfortunately, this section is a lot of memorization. There's no other way around it. I'm really going to go over just sort of the 7-ish standard unit conversions. There are more of them, but these are sort of the standard issue ones that you should really know. And there is a very useful phrase that people use when trying to memorize what each of these are. So I'm going to go over each word of the phrase. I'm going to go over which prefix it corresponds to. And then I'm going to go over which power of 10 it corresponds to. Because all of these essentially just result in a different power of 10. Okay, so, I'm going to start, I'm just going to go through the phrase, the phrase just real quick. The phrase is King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. And if there's any way to go, that sounds like a pretty good one. So what each of these means, each of the first letter of each of these words corresponds to a different prefix. So I'm actually going to start in the middle with unexpectedly. Unexpectedly corresponds to the word unit. And this is sort of the base that we're starting with. Okay, so this is 10 to the 0th power, or just 1, right? Anything to the 0th power is 1. So that is the base you're starting with. So that's sort of like the metric unit you're describing. So grams or liters or meters, that's sort of the standard issue. And now when you start adding prefixes onto that unit, you get different powers. So for instance, working our way up, died corresponds to deca. And that's 10 to the 1st power. Okay, which I'm actually going to not even write. I'm just going to write 10 to the 1st power. There we go. So if you have a decagram, that means you have 10 grams. Okay, if you have a decaliter, you have 10 liters. And then as you work your way up, H corresponds to hecto, and that's 10 squared. So if you have a hectogram, you have 10 squared, which is 100 grams. If you have a hectoliter, you have 100 liters. And then the K is kilo. So if you have a kilogram, you have 1,000 or 10 cubed grams. If you have a kilometer or kilometer, right, you have 1,000 meters. And then as we work our way the other direction, we get negative powers. So this D is deci, and that corresponds to 10 to the negative 1. So if you have a decimeter, you have 1/10 of a meter. Chocolate is centi, and that corresponds to 10 to the negative 2, or 1/100th. So if you have a centimeter, that's 1/100th of a meter. And the word centi should sound kind of familiar, like century. Century is 100 years. So you can see how that sort of like that cent piece has to do with 100. And then milk corresponds to milli, which I always forget whether it has 2 L's or 1. And that corresponds to 10 to the negative 3. So if you have a millimeter, that's 1/1000th of a meter. So it's really tiny. Okay. So these are the different prefixes, and this is what they all mean. So let's go over how we're going to use that in our conversions. So for number 1, we're starting with 470 grams, which I'm just going to write 470 G. The common shortening of grams is just G. So when converting, I always like to use this method called the picket fence method, because you build a picket fence. So I'm trying to convert to kilograms, to kg. Okay, so I want to cancel out my grams and have kilograms now. So that means if I'm converting between grams and kilograms, I have to have grams down below and kilograms up above. The reason for this is because, again, I want the grams to cancel out. So since grams are up top here, I need grams down below there. And once they cancel out, all I'll be left with is the kilograms. So then, okay, what is the conversion? Well, remember, 1 gram corresponds to 10 to the cubed kilograms. So, sorry, the other way around, my bad. 1 kilogram is 10 to the cubed grams, okay? That's what this prefix means. If you have a kilogram, that means you have 1,000 grams. So 1 kilogram converts to 10 cubed grams. So usually the way to think about this is you're going to be changing the unit. So anytime you have a prefix, the thing with the prefix always has a 1 here, whereas the regular unit you're working with will have whatever this conversion factor is. Okay, so 1 kilogram corresponds to 10 cubed grams. Now, again, the grams cancel out, so we get 470 over 10 cubed. Since we're dividing by 10 cubed, we can write that as 470 times 10 to the negative 3 kilograms. Okay, so we can, because the 10 cubed is in the denominator, we can rewrite the exponent with a negative 3. And if we wanted to, we can rewrite this in scientific notation, right? Or we can just kind of write this out. If we have 10 to the negative 3, that means wherever our decimal place is, we're going to move it to the left by 3 units. Okay, negative means move to the left, positive means move to the right. So I'm going to be moving this decimal place 3 pieces over. So this corresponds to 0.470 kilograms. 0.470. Okay, so we could write it as 470 times 10 to the negative 3, or if we wanted to simplify it, get rid of that 10 to the negative 3, we can move it over to 0.470 kilograms. And then the last thing to ask yourself is, does that make sense? 470 grams equaling 0.47 kilograms, does that make sense? And it does, right? Because kilograms are bigger than grams. So if we want these to be equal, we need less of the big stuff and more of the small stuff. So it does make sense. That's always the last thing you want to check. Does it actually make sense? Cool. Okay, let's go on to number 2. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. So number 2, we're converting from milliliters to liters. So we're starting with 3.10 times 10 to the 5th milliliters. And again, we want to convert from milliliters to liters. So we want milliliters on the bottom and liters on the top. Okay, that way the milliliters will cancel out. Okay, well then how many milliliters are there in a liter? Well, down here at the bottom, it tells us that 1 milliliter corresponds to 10 to the negative 3 liters. Okay, 1 milliliter is 10 to the negative 3 liters. Because remember, you put 1 in front of the things that has the prefix, and then this conversion, this power of 10 goes in front of the regular unit. Okay, so when we multiply across, the 10 to the 5th and the 10 to the negative 3, we end up adding the exponents. So 5 plus negative 3 is 2. So this gives us 3.10 times 10 squared liters, which we can leave like this because it is in scientific notation, or we can convert it to 310 liters, right? We move the decimal over 2 units to the right because of this 2. So that corresponds to 310 liters. And again, does that make sense? Well, this is a huge amount of milliliters, right? It's times 10 to the 5th. And it corresponds to a smaller amount of liters. Liters are bigger than milliliters, so you would need less of this and more of this for it to be equal. So it does make sense. Okay, last one we're going to do, converting decimeters to picometers. Now, I didn't give you what pico was. I'll just tell you. It's another common one in chemistry. So I'll just tell you when we get to it. So when doing this conversion, we have 4, 5, 6, 7 decimeters, and we're trying to convert to picometers. Typically, the way to do that is you first convert to your regular unit, and then you convert. So if you're trying to convert between prefixes, you first convert to your regular unit without any prefix, and then you convert to the other prefix. So first, I want to convert decimeters to meters, and then I want to convert meters to picometers. That's the general process. First convert to my base unit of meters, and then convert to the other thing I'm trying to go to. So what'll happen is the DMs cancel here, and the M's cancel there, meaning we're left with picometers, which is what we want. So how many decimeters are there in a meter? Well, we look here. Decimeter is 10 to the negative 1. So for every 1 decimeter we have, that corresponds to 10 to the negative 1 meters. And then, okay, picometer conversion. Again, I didn't show you that on this chart, but I'll just tell you. A picometer is 10 to the negative 12 meters. Very tiny, but also a common, a common conversion in chemistry. I have this the other way around, of course. Remember, the power of 10 goes with the meter. There we go. So 1 picometer is 10 to the negative 12 meters. Very, very tiny. Very, very tiny. Okay, so let's see what happens. We have these 2 different powers of 10. One's on the top, one's on the bottom. So what do you do when you're dividing? Well, you subtract exponents. So I have negative 1 minus negative 12. So when we're doing minus negative 12, that becomes plus 12. Negative 1 plus 12 is a positive 11. So I end up having 4, 5, 6, 7 times 10 to the positive 11th picometers. Which, if we want to get into scientific notation, we want to move this decimal over so that it's right behind the first number. So we're moving it to the left by 3 units. Okay? So we're going to have to add 3 to our exponent. It'll be 4.567 times 10 to the 14th now. We added 3. Okay? Because the idea here is we're starting off at a disadvantage. We're starting off further to the left, when in reality we want to be further to the right. So we have to add those extra 3 units to sort of make up for it. So kind of think of this. If we're starting here, and I were to multiply by 10 cubed, I would end up back here. So if I were to use 3 of these, I would end up back to where I started, meaning I'm back to the 10 to the 11th. So that's how those sort of writing and scientific notation works. And we're not going to really emphasize that too much, but I did want to review it pretty quickly. So we have 4.567 times 10 to the 14 picometers. All right. Thank you all for watching. As I mentioned at the beginning, my name is Jason and I work for the ASU Tutoring Centers. If you want more information about the free services we offer on all 4 campuses and online, please check out tutoring.asu.edu. If you want to see more resources like this that go over specific concepts in your course, or maybe you want to see what upcoming review sessions we have for your course, go ahead and check out that link below. Thank you all again for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.